When you hear Press Taylor talk, you think, man, he sounds so smart, but does it translate? The pressure's on him. I'll tell you in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Make no mistake about it, it is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars, and we thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of said podcast that you can find in multiple places. One of them is over on YouTube. Make sure when you go over to Locked On Jaguars, you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, and then you hit the bell so that you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, whatever location that is, make sure you tap in to that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Now, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your jobs for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hello and shout out to all of the everydayers. Those are the people that listen to the show every day. We call them our Locked On Podcast Network and Locked On Jaguars everydayers. You can be one. All you got to do is listen every single day, and I'll call you an everydayer. Let me know when you see me in public that you're an everydayer, and I'll give you a shout out on today's show. Segment number 3 of this show, that's when we'll be coming back down, landing on the runway, and hopefully what we'll get to, we'll tell you if anything's missing on this team and what is it. Something's missing on every team. Even the team that wins the championship has some holes that they're going to fill. Right? They're going to get draft picks next year, right? And those draft picks won't necessarily just be to make up for people that they don't re-sign in free agency. It'll be to improve their team. So we're going to look at the Jaguars now, and I'll tell you how I came to this conclusion. Because before that, we're going to talk about concepts versus talent. The word concepts comes up a lot when you talk to certain people, especially offensive people. And in this situation, we heard from Press Taylor this morning before Jaguars practice, and he mentioned concepts. So that's where we're going to start. Press Taylor sounding the part. If you listen to Press Taylor, the first time I heard Press Taylor, I turned around, I think it was to the play-by-play voice of the Jacksonville Jaguars radio broadcast, Frank Frangie, my big brother. I think I turned and told Frank he's going to be a head coach one day. He just sounds like that type of person, that he talks it through to the point where you understand it very, very clearly. I would suggest, if you want to know what I'm talking about, after this podcast is over, not right now, but go over to jaguars.com or either the Jacksonville Jaguars YouTube page and listen to what Press Taylor, not what he sounds like, that's my job to talk about that, but listen to what he actually says about the Jaguars offense. And that's where I want to start, because so many people make the whole play calling angle bigger than it really probably should be. Understandable, though. Most folks don't realize the type of work that goes into what these guys do every single day. And that's some of the reasons why I've been, and this is not for anybody that wants to start, this is not okay, T-Wig's going to take up for Press Taylor. No, I'm just going to try to make you understand the process a little bit more, try to make you look and see what really might be wrong and what might not be. This is one of the reasons, though, why I go easy on just calling out one person. My friend Tony Baselli, Hall of Famer Tony Baselli, mentioned on the radio with WJXL 1010XL, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, that he's really kind of tired of hearing that, and it was the Jags' fault for even saying it. Raise your hand if you've heard that before. Not saying he took it from me, but reasonable people can come to the same conclusion. I said the day the Jaguars said Press Taylor was going to be calling plays, I went, oh my God, right here on this show. And the reason I did that was because, one, I didn't think they should have said anything, because it's going to take on its own identity. Two, the second something else or something goes wrong on this team, you have given fans who are optimistic, who are passionate, you have given them something. And this is, and I applaud fans for this, but this is what they do. That optimism And that feeling that they're going to win everything and that Doug is good and Trevor is great, coming off of a year where the Jaguars in 2022 made a playoff run, they're going to blame somebody for something. They don't want change. They just want improvement on what they saw. So when things go wrong, it is very easily done. Well, it's very easy for them to turn around and say, that's what it is, because we didn't do that last year. You know, and the truth of the matter is, I have tried ad nauseum to tell everyone that was exactly what they did last year. The only thing they did differently was announce it to everyone. And I got this from people who were on that staff, who knew this whole crew of people when they were somewhere else. And they said, no, it ain't happened. That's where they always did things. Not only is that the way Andy did it when Doug was there with him, and that's the way Doug did it when Frank Reich was with him, and he did it when Press was there. That's the way that they have always done it. Folks won't believe for 1 minute that when Andy Reid said Eric Bieniemy was calling a lot of those plays, they didn't want to believe that for 1 second. They gave all the credit to Andy Reid because they were winning. Then with Press Taylor, no one wants to believe that he called all of the plays when they were winning, but everybody wants to believe that he called all of the plays when they were losing. They were 8-3 at the beginning of last year, if y'all don't recall, and nobody was singing his praises because the offense was struggling, and they were winning primarily with defense getting turnovers, but they were winning games, right? Down the stretch, when in 2022, Press Taylor was calling plays, there's even video of that run that the Jaguars have often played, and other people have often played a lot when they made that run. And you heard people saying, great call, Press. Press did something real good. The players, they were mic'd up, said it. But people don't want to believe it. So that was the mistake. He sounds the part. And the thing that I mean by that is not just because he's articulate. There are a lot of dudes that have been articulate. Gus Bradley was articulate. There's a lot of people that have been articulate. Hackett, Nathaniel Hackett is articulate behind the microphone. Of course, they can talk the talk. And football. What football coach? Well, maybe Doug Marrone wasn't, but that I ain't saying he couldn't speak. But Doug just talked like like he was a dude selling hot dogs in the Bronx somewhere on the corner of Manhattan. So the thing is you have to not just pay attention to what he sounds like, but think of what he's saying. So when I say he sounds the part, it's not about the style or how eloquent the words come out. Because Steve Spurrier wasn't eloquent when he spoke, but man, did he sound the part, because you understood exactly what he was saying. If you listen to what Press says, he shows you what this process is all about. Concepts. And that's what we're going to talk about in segment 2, because I want to talk the difference between concepts and then the talent with those concepts, how those things work, the inner workings of, as the way he explained it this morning, of how they all come to the conclusions of the things that they want to do, and how they come to the conclusions of how they're going to go about their business. And this is all because they're having these joint sessions come in. And I know he wants to explain to people how they go through their process to a certain extent so that folks can kind of understand it. They work really, really hard behind the scenes. Now, sometimes it just doesn't work, but it's not always because of the person that's calling the plays. There's a big process that goes into this. I'm going to get into some of the things he said. I'm going to kind of try to walk you through it and explain it to you why I feel the way I feel about it. I'm going to do all of that here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. It takes passion, drive, and patience for a football team to win. And that's the same formula that keeps your ride or die alive, that meaning your vehicle. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. We're talking about Press Taylor and the parts and the concepts and the talent and all of that stuff. And how can I help? I always try to make people smarter, right? I don't try to make people think like me, but I try to give more information so that the Jaguar fans can make more nuanced and more informed opinions, mainly so your blood pressure don't drive you crazy when things don't go right and you start chasing the tail and blaming things that aren't. If I gave you a can of bug repellent and something bit you while you were sleeping, you got this big knot on your arm, I don't want you going and spraying a whole bunch of bugs that didn't bite you. I want you to save it for the one that actually bit you. Okay? Ain't no nets. There no flies do that unless it was a yellow fly who's a terrorist. But you know what I mean. Make sure you use that repellent on the right thing. That's why I want you to use all your anger in the right place. I want you to place it in the right spot, because there's nothing wrong with misplacing your anger, because that means the thing that you were angry about, you never really addressed it. So that's kind of why I want, to hip fans to this and make them understand why I said forever. And I probably need to apologize to anyone who's listened to this show before. And I'm going to advance apologize to people who are listening for the first time and have no clue what I'm talking about. I'm going to try to I'm going to try to contextually fill you in. I almost said concepts. I've been thinking about concepts so much. But Press Taylor was talking about how they go about watching plays. And again, I got this from watching the presser this morning. A little difficulty early in the morning, so getting my bones to act right. So didn't make camp today. I'll tell you that right now, because this is gonna drop while camp is going along. So I know y'all gonna know that I didn't make camp today, but I'm tuning myself up as much as I can, handling my business to try to physically be able to go out there and do that tomorrow. But by the way, shout out to anybody else that's dealing with bad bones and arthritis and all of that. Y'all get what I'm talking about. But the thing is he spoke so eloquently about, he said that they may talk about a concept for an hour. He may text guys. He may have a one-on-one conversation, talking about his quarterbacks. And then they'll sit in the room, in a meeting room with the other coaches and watch these concepts. And they use the film from practice sessions and preseason games, and even probably even games in the past, to go over what will happen on each play, understanding the talent that you have on the field to run those plays, knowing what the defense is giving you, trying to figure out if the guys you have and their specific skill sets can give you what you're seeing on tape or can give you what you think you're going to get. How does it look against different alignments? They go into practice and they're asking Ryan Nielsen, Ryan, can you have them do this so we can do that? And that's another reason sometimes when you're watching things in the stands or when you're watching them on the sideline, even as a member of the media, something will happen and you'll go, oh boy. And the first thing that'll come to your mind is that player isn't good or that player hasn't improved. Without understanding that they're saying, like, no, man, you're watching us try to figure this stuff out. And I probably was guilty of it when I said Trevor Lawrence threw 2 interceptions to the same spot to Dewey Wingard within 5 minutes. Factually, did that happen? Sure. The next day it was explained, and I came on Locked On Jaguars, and I explained that, okay, Trevor had to throw the ball. They wanted him to throw the ball. They wanted him to try this, and they did this against this coverage and that coverage. To the naked eye, it appeared to be the same thing. I bet you in the film room it wasn't. And it's something that they all worked on together. And then they probably took that tape in and said, okay, you can't do that in this situation. And then even if this dude moves over here in the second situation, that coverage is going to still give you the same thing. So you can't do that in either one of those situations. So we're not going to try that in that situation. Not only did he discuss it from that perspective, he discussed it from the perspective of what part of the game, when and where. He talked about being on the field, and he was talking about how when he was up in the box, all of his spreadsheets were spread apart. But then when you're on the field, you don't get the opportunity to do all of that, but you can sit there and have a conversation with coaches. That you can't do that on the headset because everybody will hear it all the time. But in between plays, you can have all of these different concepts. You still have to get down in distance from upstairs and like what hash they're on and who's doing what personnel is coming in and out of the game. And so now you know who to attack and where to attack. But you're right on the field. And he said, you can actually go over, you can talk to the players, you can talk through the concept. And then he says, then you just move on to your next run sets. Just think of how complex and of an operation that is to know on your sheet at what point in the game you're going to call these plays, at what point in the game you think you'll attack in this area. It's all based on film study from what you saw from the other team. When are you going to get to this? At what point did you install that? How did it go when you did it? Hey, do you remember that thing we saw Monday when we were talking Monday night at about 8:30 at night, and I had you in there for a whole hour and we went this, and this. Okay, well, they're doing this and they're very similar to that. And remember how we got that? And then the next play, if you fake it this way, you'll get to play the other way. And we said in 3rd and 3, this was guaranteed going to get us 4 yards, and we know where we're going to go to ball, and we know who we're going to put in the game. And when all of these things that they're not showing you in preseason, all of the things that they work on when they tell the media, y'all got to go once these games really start get going and once they start preparing for the regular season. All the things that they talk about when it's just team only, and they compress all of this stuff. This is like 16 to 18 hours a day, and they compress all of this stuff down to a play sheet for 3 hours that they're going to run, and half of that's going to be spent on defense. So for an hour and a half. In the movie When the Five Heartbeats, when they brought the old guy in to help with choreography, and he goes, show me your best combination. That is what they do every single Sunday. They'll pretend this is a play sheet. They're going to show you their best combination. And their best combination ain't always the same thing because it's predicated on what they see the other team doing, what the personnel is, who's on the field, what our guys are capable of. And that's where I want to stop because we're going to talk about talent in segment 3. Now, if on tape, if they did a self-evaluation, and it doesn't even, you don't even have to do a self-evaluation. You could have got a fan to tell you that Luke Fortner couldn't block anybody last year, right? And I don't mean like a seasoned fan. I'm talking about somebody who just started watching football a year ago, who's in middle school. They could have told you, well, your center sucks. That, if you can say that, what do you think they're being honest with themselves about? And they don't come out and tell you in the microphone. They're trying to boost this dude up. You think they're going to come out and tell you he can't block anybody? No, they're going to get in the offseason. They're going to sign somebody. And that tells you that they knew he couldn't block anybody. So if they know that, if that's a part of it, if that limits their capability, how do you think it affects the overall concept and overall scheme and attack on Sunday? And that is not a coaching problem. That's a talent evaluator GM problem. That's a problem that I've been talking about for years, that they don't have what it takes on the offensive line. But even that might not be just about talent. That might be about concepts. I want to get into this a little bit more. And I'm going to ask this question. I don't want you to look past this year, but just know this. If you go up and ask Trent Baalke, how you like your roster? And he just goes, still got to go out and prove it. Just know that is exactly what I did. And that's exactly the response I got. I was with somebody that said, I think you like your roster. It looks like you like your roster. He said, yeah, we'll see. And most coaches will say, I do, but we'll see. And most GMs will say, I do, but and I don't blame him for that because I know what it comes from. What it comes from is we could always get better. I'm going to make sure I hit you with that one in segment number 3. I want you to hang around too, man, because I think I might set a lot of people free. I set myself free when I really sat and thought about this. I absolutely did. You always set us free when you make Locked On Jaguars your first listen. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to explain my thought process as it pertains to whether or not the Jaguars actually have the talent that they need this year to win. We'll discuss all of that and tell you exactly what I mean in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. First, I got to let you know about LinkedIn Talent Solutions. That's right, LinkedIn. It isn't just a job board. When you're hiring for small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. And even those who aren't actively searching for new jobs, they might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading sites. So if you're looking for on LinkedIn Jobs, if you're looking for the best, that's where they are. And they don't look anywhere else. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. They know small business better than anybody and are wearing, and the people who run businesses are wearing so many hats, they might not be able to have time or resources to hire. And that's why you call them. So what you need to do is post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, LOCKEDONNFL, to post your job for free. And remember, terms and conditions, they apply. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. And we're going to continue our conversation here now about concepts, talent, Press Taylor. Like, what would you do, right? If you had a center that couldn't block and the offensive line kept breaking down and you had no continuity up front, what would you do? Well, one of those things about the offensive line is this. We could talk about injuries. We can talk about all of those things. The bottom line is most of us want this to be a team that really moves people in the running game. So sometimes I look out and I'm thinking like, okay, where's Landon Dickerson? Where's that 6'4", 340-pound guard? Where's the tackle that the Eagles have right now? He's like 6'6", 340 pounds. Where's the one that they had when Doug Peterson was there? Jason Peters was 6'3", 340. Lane Johnson, 6'6", 325, whatever. Where are all these big, rugged guys that push people out of the way? Where's like the Robert Hunts of the world, who's 6'6", 342, who was moving people so good in Miami that he got $25 million a year in the offseason. He wasn't even a high draft pick. Now, Cam Robinson, the one that everybody wants to run out of here, is 6'6", 330 pounds, or 6'6", 328 pounds. He's like the biggest one they have. Anton Harrison, who's probably their best, goes 6'5" and sits at around 305 or somewhere. When you look at them, they look really, really athletic. They don't have a whole bunch of fat dudes on their offensive line, but everybody's over 300 pounds. But they look so athletic because most of them are at a very minimum 6'5". In fact, I don't know if they have anybody 6'4". Maybe Anton's 6'4.5", going on 6'5". But I think everybody's 6'5" or better. No 6'3" guys, no 6'2.5" guys built like Coke machines or Pepsi machines or whatever. Do they have the right types? So I look at the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have those really, really athletic offensive linemen. In fact, one of the offensive linemen used to play here, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for some reason, they move people in the offensive line. And then I look at other teams like Baltimore. They always got a bunch of those big old chunky dudes, right? and they move people. So is it about being stuck on a body type like Trent bulky prefers the lengthy guys, and those lengthy guys might not be as bulky? Or a team that runs the ball with a lot of pulling, they don't want the big bulky guys. They want guys who are quick and athletic, who provide a little bit of balance. Is it that? Or is it doesn't matter about the types you want? Are they better? I just mentioned the Chiefs. They got the same types that the Jaguars are, and the Chiefs guys are better. Could it be that they're just not good? Is that what's missing? If you had to say right now, because no team is perfect, let's just assume the Jaguars win the Super Bowl. They're going to get free agents. They're going to probably not as many, but they're going to have a whole other draft. What position right now would be the thing that you draft if you were the Jacksonville Jaguars next year? Just right now, without knowing anything, just whether they win the Super Bowl or they go 0 for 17. I think the first thing anybody would do, and I don't want to hear anybody say quarterback because that's physically impossible. They're not going to do that, okay? I'll give John Shipley credit. John Shipley said last year before the season even started, this time next year, the Jaguars are going to be looking for a number one receiver. Jaguars went and drafted a number one receiver and signed a dude that's like a 2B because they start three guys at that position. He was right. I agree with him then, and I'm giving him props now. Shout out to John Shipley for SI. I'm going to say this. They're going to need an offensive lineman, and I know y'all going to say, Wig, you've been saying that for 3 years. You damn right I've been saying it for 3 years. It's either that or safety, another safety to be here for the long haul, but the offensive line has more valuable. I tell you right now, if they had 3 picks, 1 in the first and 2 in the second round, they should draft 2 offensive linemen in the first and second round, and then probably a safety with the other pick, or a tight end who can play every down, which will create a roster spot, a guy who blocks and catches, not just a blocker or a catcher, a guy who does both if he's there. But I'm telling you, I think they need 2 offensive linemen. That's the thing that I believe is missing. So I wouldn't necessarily say that, well, they just need to get bigger, stronger people. That's kind of what I thought. But if their philosophy is we don't want big fat dudes like that, we want guys that are athletic, then you got to get guys that are athletic that are just better than the guys you have right now. Some of them. So that's why, I'm kind of stuck with when I kept hearing this word concepts. They're putting the work in. I get the feeling sometimes when I hear people's opinions about them is that they think they go home after they rest on their laurels after an 8-hour day. No, they're putting the work in. What if they're just wrong about it? And what if they're wrong about, not wrong to the point where they can't win games, but what if they're wrong about how they're going to be able to win a championship? This is where you trust Doug Peterson more. But Doug Peterson has to also be able to know that Trent Baalke is going to do for him what Howie Roseman was able to do in Philly. And that is put the right people, you got to bring him the right ingredients so that he can do what he wants to do. If there's one thing I'm concerned about, is that the offensive line isn't going to be good enough to extract all of that stuff out of the skill position players that they have. And sometimes there's certain things you can't make up for. I think you can win some more games, but when you get into the playoffs, at some point, if you're going to win it, I've never seen a team with a bad offensive line win a Super Bowl. The Rams were real close a couple of years ago, but they had like a Hall of Famer in Witt, old dude that's on NFL Network. You know what I'm talking about. So he only had to be good for one more game, and that's the kind of guy you need. Somebody who can just pull all his whole career. That whole Hall of Fame career, even though he's not what he used to be, he can be one time what he used to be. And then he goes out there and he just does his thing. The point is they won the game because they had the dudes to block the Bengals. The Bengals didn't have the dudes to block them. Aaron Donald got there and Von Miller got there in the fourth quarter just in time, because if Joe Burrow has a little bit more time, they probably lose at the end of the game. On that 4th down play, Jamar Chase was wide open. Just didn't have time to get in the ball. So It goes back to saying we can talk all day about Press Taylor. We can talk all day about having this feeling that they don't know what they're doing. And even though they're trying 18 hours a day and they're coming up with these concepts and they're looking and they're doing all of the right things, and they could be doing everything, all of the right stuff, and the players just not be good enough at certain positions. And I always said the offensive line is one position where you can't get past it. I don't care how good you are, you're not going to. Eventually, you ain't holding a Lombardi trophy if your offensive line is shaky. It's going to be interesting to watch, but just don't confuse the fact that Press Taylor works his butt off. And it's not just him. It's Doug. It's the other coaches. It's Mike McCoy. It's Chad Hall. It's the offensive line coach, Phil Rauscher. And mainly it's Doug Peterson. And they come up with this formula together after hard work. Make no mistake about it, the plays you see them call are the ones they are the best at. That doesn't mean that their best is going to be good enough every day. How does it get good enough? You got to get better players in the position where you're not as strong. And to me, that is the offensive line. And if there's one thing that scares the daylights out of me, and it still does after one preseason game, that's exactly what it is. But we ain't going to pour, water on those burning embers that you guys have that is this season coming up, because we still think it's going to be fun, and we're going to give the offensive line a chance to show us exactly what it is that they can do. And hopefully they do well, because those skill position players are people in fantasy football that you're going to be hoping you win your fantasy games with. Not only that, you want to feel good about your own team. But listen, thank you for making Locked On Jaguars your first listen today. Now go listen to Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight into the best fantasy draft strategy so you can win your league this season. You can find the link to Locked On Fantasy Football in the descriptions, so you don't need to search, but it's also part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We'll have more tomorrow from joint practices. Tomorrow's show will be a little bit later because of joint practices. Until then, you guys take care. I'll see you next time on Locked On Jaguars.